Coming up, this week, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have finally said it. Brexit did break Britain. But before any of us start applauding this sudden outburst of honesty, remember, it's taken this government over a year to acknowledge the Brexit issue, and they're doing so now only in desperation as their poll numbers hit a record low and their Reform UK Tribute Act is moving the needle in the unintended direction. The man most responsible for Brexit is Nigel Farage, and instead of trying to imitate him, this government should be rightly pinning the blame on him for the economically and socially catastrophic Brexit that he himself pushed so hard for over decades. Stay tuned. For years, the word Brexit was treated like a religion that mustn't be blasphemed, an article of faith not to be questioned. Mention it and you risked alienating Brexit fundamentalists and the overwhelmingly pro-Brexit grift right-wing media. Up until last year, Starmer's Labour tiptoed around Brexit as if speaking the truth might cost them the election. All the talk was of Starmer carrying a Ming vase across an ice rink in order that he could win the election by not upsetting anybody and by, well, just not being the Tories, really. But since the election, it's like nobody had yet managed to prise the Brexit Ming vase out of Starmer's clenched hands. This week, though, it seems that something shifted. Both Starmer and Reeves finally linked Brexit to Britain's economic decline. Before we take a closer look, please take a moment to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel and hit that notifications bell, particularly if you're a member of the channel with the perk of early access to my videos. At his party's recent conference, Starmer dialed up his previously softly rhetoric on the UK's departure from the EU by using his speech to refer to the Brexit lies on the side of that bus. Click here for your new country. We can all see these snake oil merchants. The shift in tone from Starmer is quite striking and follows the September arrival in Downing Street of arch Remainer Tim Allen as Executive Director of Communications for the government. I'd imagine this appointment was a reaction to Reform 2025 Limited's continued success in the polls, although they do seem to have hit a natural ceiling as of late, as detailed in one of my recent videos. I think Tim Allen's strategy is basically to say that, look, tax rises are coming, but he's trying to turn defence into attack, the message being, are you upset by tax rises? Then don't blame us, blame the people who brought you Brexit. Which is exactly what the Labour government should have been doing since July last year. Rachel Reeves is also part of this Brexit paradigm shift in government. She said of Brexit this week that the Office for Budget Responsibility do the forecasts for the economy. What they've done this summer is go back to all of their forecasts and look at what actually happened compared to what they forecast. She added that the OBR found the economy has been weaker and productivity has been weaker than they forecast. Those forecasts were, at the time, labelled Project Fear by Brexiteers. But what we now know in 2025, and what Rachel Reeves is making absolutely clear here, is that Brexit has had an even more damaging impact on the UK economy than the OBR forecasts had predicted. And Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey has gone even further this week, answering a Sky News question about Brexit. If you ask me what the impact is on economic growth, the answer is that for the foreseeable future, it is negative. The World Travel and Tourism Council has become the latest major international institution to announce plans to move its headquarters from the UK to the EU because of Brexit. The group cites lower operational costs and EU single market access. Yet one more indicator in a week that has suggested that the political cost of staying silent has finally outweighed the political risk of telling the truth. Labour have, quite understandably, blamed the country's woes on the incompetence, austerity and corruption of the previous decade or so of Tory rule, and it now looks like they've extended that strategy to Brexit, and more specifically, the Farage Brexit. And it would seem to be an eminently sensible strategy when you think about it. As you can see from this poll tracker, when Labour came into power, there was a huge reduction in those thinking that the government was handling Brexit badly, giving the new government the benefit of the doubt, obviously. But pretty much ever since the election, dissatisfaction levels have continued to rise, and Labour needed to change their stance on Brexit. Polls show 2/3 of British voters now believe Brexit has failed, though 4 out of 5 of them blame Boris Johnson rather than Mr Brexit himself, Nigel Farage. Farage tries to wriggle off that hook by claiming there could have been a good Brexit, but just not this one. Farage admits Brexit has been a failure, but his narrative is that it didn't go far enough. Do you follow the logic? Farage admits Brexit has been crap, but somehow if it had gone further, if it had been stronger, if we'd had an even more Brexity Brexit, somehow, illogically, according to Farage, it would have been great, rather than being even Brexitier and thus even crapper. Rather than defending the indefensible in that way, Farage has latterly switched to a new strategy. Don't mention Brexit at all. And if he's forced to address it by a journalist, he just pretends it was nothing to do with him. And much like Farage, Labour's stance on Brexit isn't bravery, it's brand management. Like everything else so far, from immigration to taxation to green energy, rather than leading, Starmer's government seems to be trying to follow public opinion. But acknowledging the damage of Brexit is not the same as actually repairing it. Starmer has already ruled out rejoining the EU, the single market or the customs union in his lifetime, and nothing there has changed this week. And if you've watched the Brexit disaster unfold over the past 9 years, you've every right to be just as furious at the Labour enablers, Corbyn and then Starmer, as you are at the shysters and grifters that actually delivered Brexit. Brexit was sold as sovereignty and control. What we got was red tape, lost growth and falling wages. We have far less control over our borders, far less influence in the world and a far weaker economy. All in the name of sovereignty, a word which any Brexit voter would be very hard pushed to define beyond the meaningless cliché of take back control. And a word which is in any case irrelevant in the 21st century's interconnected world, where wealth-creating trade deals and sovereignty are inversely related. A trade deal will always require giving up a degree of sovereignty by definition. That's what the deal part of trade deal really means. Total sovereignty means total isolation, zero trade deals, zero power, zero influence, and a population that is massively less wealthy. The very reasons why we became a member of the EU in the first place. And Labour under Corbyn, and now under Starmer, stayed silent until the polls turned safe. And for that, I can never forgive them. And here's where Zack Polanski's Green Party are showing what leadership should look like. To quote the new Green leader, "We can't fix the economy, the environment or social justice without fixing our relationship with Europe." Straight and to the point. What a refreshing change from Labour's pussyfooting. The Lib Dems have also been disappointing since Brexit. The language they use is often things like seek talks, study, a target for 2030 and so on. The Greens' plan is far more defined, to start negotiations with the EU immediately to re-enter the single market and customs union as a first step to full membership. The Green Party call it a reconnection rather than rejoining. Their whole approach is aimed at using non-confrontational language that detoxifies the debate, whilst also dealing with facts rather than emotions. So, while Labour have finally acknowledged the bus crash, the Greens are already organising a recovery operation. And by the way, Zack Polanski, if you're watching, you're welcome to come on the Truth to Power channel anytime. Relax. I'll leave you with these words from Naomi Smith, the chief executive of Best for Britain, who said this week, "Politics is finally catching up with both public opinion and economic reality. No one serious still argues that Brexit has been anything but an abject failure. The Chancellor has made the important first step of acknowledging the scale of the damage, and now the government must chart the path for meaningful economic growth." And on that positive note, thanks for watching. Remember to hit like, leave a comment below and share this video with your friends and subscribe for free. And if you want to support the Truth to Power channel even further, then just hit the join button below.